My dear students, young learners and the job seekers, welcome back to one more short video, but this time, mind you, we are discussing a new topic that is on facing the job interview. I think we had around 15 to 16, I think, videos on group discussion. Now begins our journey on interview skills, right? So we'll be discussing today on facing job interviews, basics to know. I think it is just introductory. Will subsequent videos will go into the details of. Now, but before I go into the topic, job interview skills, let us realize, it's a truth that some of the job aspirants, young job aspirants, they are very shy and scared of before an interview. For them, I hear quote a few, quotes from very famous people that will inspire you and motivate you. Please try to, understand what they mean. First one, I read it here. Trust yourself. You know more than you think you do. Sometimes we underestimate ourselves. So young learners, never underestimate yourself. Neither overestimate yourself, but don't underestimate your potential. You are much more capable of what you think you are. Next is, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So this highlights the importance of preparation for anything, right? Prepare, prepare and prepare. That's the, the famous saying goes, right? Now, finally, one more quote here by Benjamin Franklin. It's a very interesting one. Please listen very mindfully. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. This again highlights the importance of preparation. So be it GD or be it PI, you need to prepare. Okay. Now, since the topic is here job interview, we must know some, fundamentals about job interview, why it is, how it is done, okay, what is its importance. To start with, let me share with you, job interviews are part of the employee selection process, both for the freshers as well as for those who are already in. They might be seeking for upgradation, that means some promotion, and particularly for freshers, mind you, okay, post group discussion, you have to face a final interview before they take you in, before they select you. I mean, of course, there are certain steps after that also. So what is an interview basically? Okay, in a simplest possible way, we can say it is a special type of presentation of oneself for different objectives and different purpose. Okay, what could be the purpose? Taking admission to professional courses. For promotion, as I mentioned just now, that has to be on the basis of merit and suitability. So you have to go through the interview. Also for visa in embassies, when you go, right, there also you have to face an interview. Okay, each interview are a little bit different from the other, but then they are basically interviews. Now, next we see, in this particular video, we will not go into all those, categories of interviews that we just now mentioned. We will be focusing our discussion on job interviews, okay, which one attends after his or her degrees or diploma, or also after some experience also. If you want to scale up, you want a promotion, then you have to go through this interview process. So job interview, what it is, okay, no need of defining, but then understanding what it is very important. So job interviews are basically pre-arranged and planned conversation. What for? For evaluating suitability of a candidate for any particular position. Now interviewers obviously ask some questions, observe you both in your verbal as well as non-verbal responses, okay, in the interview from the interviewee, and then take a call. From the candidate's perspective, things that you must understand or take note of rather are the following. Please be very mindful. It is a common experience, as I said just now. The very idea of facing an interview makes you nervous. What is the reason? It's very simple. The fear of getting rejected, disqualified. Okay, that makes you nervous. Secondly, interviews are a complex process. It's a process of gathering information, data from both the interviewee as well as from the interviewers. It is a tool along with other screening methods. Now, don't think that only interview, if you qualify, you get into the job or you get selected. No. It's a part of the series of selection steps or process. Okay, that could be GD, oral presentations, written test, and then followed by interview, and everything has to be consolidated, and then a decision is taken for you whether you are suitable or not. There are various methods, types of job interviews conducted, and each interview has its own relevance, characteristics for which you need to prepare. Now, we will be discussing all these very briefly, because subsequent videos you will be getting to know details of. So, because since it is the first video, so what are the basics I am just going to share with you. Why an interview? Sometimes it asks, why an interview? You have already qualified, you have a certificate, okay, you have appeared the written test, maybe you have already qualified in the GD, why again then exposing yourself to the interview? Okay, as I said, your CV, resume is already there, application letter is there, mentioning about you. There are test scores. That may be, you may be carrying some letter of recommendation. There could be also references, right? But still, your employer wants to conduct an interview, which is actually the final step. Now, I'll come to that later, but let me put it here that interviews are important both for the employer as well as for the employees, or rather prospective employees, mind you. So, first let us see why it is so important for the employer. Okay. Now, reasons are very simple, mind you. Okay. Interviews allow employees to assess the candidate's skill, experience, personality. Now, here I stress, beyond what you have mentioned already in your CV resume. You might have already given some of your accomplishments, but then they want to probe beyond that. Interviewers can ask targeted questions to assess your communication skills, maybe your problem solving skills. Next is, it will also enable the employers to gather necessary information to make accurate hiring decisions. And if they make accurate decisions, what does it mean? They are reducing the risk of any errors or mistakes in selecting a wrong candidate. Okay? And also, employers use this opportunity of interviewing as a method, or rather as a channel, to create a brand image for their own organizations, right? And this is why, the principal reasons why they conduct an interview, right? They want to see you in flesh and blood. Okay. Now, from the job seekers or the interviewee, his or her perspective, why it is so important? We can list out a few. Interviews provide a platform for the candidate to elaborate on his qualifications, because you have already, you might have put these things in a bulleted form, one or two, very few words. Okay. So, further details you can add only when you are facing the interview. Secondly, it highlights the relevant skill which the employer is asking for, that you can highlight through a QA session, right? You can also explain how you can contribute, or rather how you can add value to the job role and organizations. Okay. And also, the job seeker, rather candidate or the interviewee, can gain valuable insights into organization's culture, values of the organizations, what are the career opportunities, through discussion, QA, while questioning and answer session is going on. In an interview, we can have some information on all these. Now, a candidate can also assess whether he fits into the organizational culture or not, as I said. Okay, both are necessary, job fit as well as culture fit. Are you getting me? You have to be a square peg in a square hole, both in terms of the job profile, also in terms of organizational culture. Now, these are few reasons why interview is important. Okay. Now, as I said, I will just going into the touching, very briefly on all these points, because this is the first video. So, we will now discuss about, why at all, what are the different types of normally interviews are conducted and you are likely to face. First one is panel interview. Panel, as the name very says, right? This is the most commonly adopted method, both in government, non-government, industrial or business houses, also in NGOs, international donors, they all conduct, right, this panel interview. What is this panel interview? Obviously, there will be one chairperson, then 2 to 3 more members. Each member might have his own expertise in a particular field, okay, and then you are the candidate or the interviewee, okay. So, this panel interview is basically, there are multiple interviewers, diverse questions are asked, and assessment is done not by individuals but by the whole team. Then there is something called one-to-one interview, right? So, you obviously you can also guess here. That means one person is the interviewer and there is one interviewee, okay. Now, one-to-one interview can also be structured or unstructured. What is the structured or unstructured interview? That will be going into detail in subsequently. But here I must tell you very briefly, structured interview have already prepared some questions and every candidate is exposed to those very questions one after another. But unstructured, there is some flexibility, mind you. The interviewer might question some or put some question rather which he had not earlier planned, which is not there in the list. Both have their more merits, right? So, they use either of the two, structured, unstructured. Then comes group interview. What is group interview? You can say that GD is also a group interview techniques, where the group of interviewee or the job claimants, job aspirants, they are simultaneously assessed. Okay, this is called group interview. I am not going into the details, mind you. Next is sequential interview. Sequence, one after the another. So, you go from the bottom and then move up, right? So, candidate meets multiple interviewers in a pre-planned series, one after the another. Okay? Each interviewer focuses on a particular aspect of which he is trying to assess you. Okay? And it can be conducted on a single day or it can go on for a week also, right? But ultimately the feedbacks received by each of the interviewers is consolidated and a decision is taken. That is also nowadays, this called remote interview, which is video interview, telephonic interview. In video interview, you can use all these tools, right? Technology, Skype, Google Meet, Zoom and many other platforms. Now, this is a recent, more often made use of video interview, right, where the interviewer and interviewed don't meet physically or they are not face to face. Okay. Then there are also other interview formats which we will also be discussing later, mind you, in detail, but we are just listing out here. Screening interview. As the very name says, the objective is to screen out those who do not meet the minimum criteria that has been laid down in the job description. Okay. Now, this can also be done on a phone call or in person basis depending on the suitability of both parties, right? Situational interview. What is that? It is a particular technique where they pose some situation before you, a hypothetical situation, and then they try to see how the candidate is responding, right, to that situation. So, situational interview, right? There is something called stress interview. I will be discussing in great detail about stress interview, how it is conducted, why it is conducted, right? What are the different types of questions they normally put in a stress interview, that I will coming in later. But for the time being, just Take that, is one type of interview, stress interview, and what is the, why it is conducted? This is rather how it is conducted. A candidate is deliberately subjected to a stressful situation, and then his reaction or response is assessed. Okay? They can do it in multiple ways, mind you. They can ignore your presence. You are wishing them good morning sir, good afternoon ma'am, but they are just not looking at, right? Deliberately they are doing it. Okay? Sometimes they put some interrogatory tone questions, right? Just like a police officer, mind you. Their intention, are you able to maintain your cool? Are you panicking? That's the intention. So stress interview is one type of interview. Then there is, lot of classification like structured, unstructured, which I have already explained. In a structured interview, you have a list of questions already prepared, whereas in unstructured questions, unstructured interview rather, what happens is the interview goes on depending on your response. Okay, not necessarily which they had planned initially, right? Now, next part of this presentation video today will be, regarding what to prepare for the job interview, right? So here what we do is, we put it into three categories. First is before the interview, how do you prepare? During the interview, how do you perform? And post interview, what you do. Now, to start with, before interview, what should you do? Obviously, you should get as much information regarding the company or organization you are seeking to get into. So therefore, what you do? Learn the company's vision, mission, values, recent activities, right? Their market, where they operate. Next thing you do is understand the role they are expecting in that particular position for which you are appearing the interview, right? How can you do it? Where from you get these informations? Read very thoroughly the job descriptions to identify what they want, what are the skills, which type of experience they require. So you can get all these things from the JD or job descriptions. Now before interview, next thing what you do is prepare some commonly asked questions. What do you call it? Sometimes we are very much, we use the abbreviation FAQ. What is FAQ? Frequently asked questions, right? So you can make a list of FAQ regarding in particular that organizations, then get ready with some answers. General questions, they ask in an interview, what are these, right? Tell me about yourself, right? Open-ended question, mind you. So you must get ready with. You cannot go on telling elaborately everything from tome to home to tome. So you have to prepare for that. What are your strengths and weaknesses? This is a common question, they ask you. You have to identify your strength, right? Unless they ask you, don't go into your weaknesses, right? Next, why should we hire you? This is another question. So some of the frequently asked questions you must prepare. Then comes develop a story for particularly the behavioral questions. That's a particular type of question, in the interview they ask is what is called BEI. Okay. Now, these are behavioral interview basically. We will be discussing more of that in detail subsequently. For behavioral questions, what you have to do is you have to describe a time you dealt with a very difficult situation, right? And the mode is something called STAR method of answering. STAR is the abbreviation and it stands for situation, task, action and results. So what was the situation? What was the job? What was the task? What action you performed? And then what was the outcome or results? This is how you have to respond to a behavioral event interview questions, BEI as I said, right? Then let us see what are the, during the interview, what should you do? You have to project yourself very, professionally, right? So what you have to do? First and foremost is confidence, mind you. Project confidence, okay? What is that, right? Present a positive, confident body language, right? Maintain eye contacts, sit straight, don't slouch, don't push back, right? Maintain a smiling face, open arm, show some energy on your face, right? Now, these are some of the ways you can project your confidence. Next is listen carefully. During the interview, don't jump into a answering question, before listening, before completing, right? You can commit very serious, silly errors. So better have patience, listen to the question carefully from the interviewers. In case you are unable to get it, you can politely request them to, clarify or respond or repeat. Okay. Third thing you should do is provide specific examples, mind you. Simply saying I was a very good sports person, I was a very good organizer won't do. You have to say what exactly some of the situations where played this role of leadership or organizing or whatever you are claiming to. So you have to provide specific examples. Next comes ask your own questions, but then don't throw some questions which are not actually necessary, right? And only if they give you an opportunity at the end to ask a question, better you ask the question, otherwise don't ask, right? So you may ask the interview about the job role if you have any doubts, the team you are ultimately going to put this selected person, or the company culture. Okay, you have collected some information from the organization culture, right? But then you can always seek a clarification on that. But as I said, don't put the question unless they give you an opportunity, right? Do not ask about salary in particular. How much salary I am going to get? See, they have not selected you, so this is not the right time. Okay, if they are asking you about, how much salary acceptable to you, then you can put it in a way that I will be discussing later on. But don't ever ask this question if they give you at the end and scope. Now we are coming to the end of the interview. You have any question to ask? So there you don't put this question of salary. Okay. Now then what you should do after the interview? Should you just walk away, remain silent, right? You have to thank them, each panel member. So send a thank you note subsequently, right? And it has to be done within 24 hours. You don't send a thank you message by mail after a fortnight or so. No, it has to be done within 24 hours, and it has to be a personalized thank you email to each person in the panel, mind you, right? So for that, what you have to do is you have to already, contact, you have to collect the contact details, email IDs, right? Mention specific when in your, thank you note. Just simply thank you won't do, right? Refer to specific points of the discussion for which you are thanking them. For instance, they might have given you some very vital information. They might have corrected you while you are responding to an answer, right? So those things you can put down in your thank you note after the interview. Should you do a follow-up? Some people say should not. Yeah, it all depends. If the organization has already mentioned somewhere that you need not do any inquiry or follow-up, then never do it. But normally what allows, they have some time they put, right? Follow-up time are provided and you can follow up after that time lapse, right? If no time was given, a gentle follow-up can reinforce your continued interest. Okay, it can go either way, mind you. Don't panic, don't be in a hurry, right? Remember, some organization, as I said, make it very clear not to follow up. In that case, don't do it. Okay. Now, in a job interview, they put so many types of questions, right? As I said, so I'll just list out very briefly some of the type of question they ask you, because type of question all depends on the type of job, type of organization, level of or the position for which you are appearing the interview. But common type of questions, we can put them under these following categories. Open-ended questions, right? What are they? They are intended to enable the candidate to talk very freely. Okay. Then there is something just opposite of closed-ended question. Here you don't have much options. It could be yes, no questions. Are you a graduate? Yes, I am, or I am not. Probing questions. What are these? To clarify and explain any statement you have already made. Reflective questions. Question to confirm the statement you have already given. Loaded questions. Questions connected to the sensitive issues. Like they are talking about what is your stature? I mean, what? How tall are you? You know, these are the questions, you know, sometimes they ask you. These are, you can consider these as a, you know, loaded questions. They are sensitive issues, you know. But next is hypothetical question, as I said, right? This involves some hypothetical situations. Now, before I conclude, I would like to remind you all, as I said in the beginning, after 15 short videos on GD which I have already shared, here on I will be sharing videos on personality interview, and so we begin the PI segment from here on. Okay. Now I quote here what Dalai Lama had said, right? Because why I will be quoting this? Because I am asking all of you, my dear students, job seekers, don't confine this, you know, video to yourself only. So I would ask you, rather request you to like, subscribe and share this. Why it is so? Now I am quoting Dalai Lama. What he said: share your knowledge, it's a way to achieve immortality. I know, I think you all know Dalai Lama. So this is where I put a full stop. Today, we'll, as I said, we'll have a series now on personality interview and elaborating each aspect which we have just touched upon today. Okay, thank you all. Thank you.